You guys, I'm so stoked for this interview. This is an opportunity to learn. It's a very good interview for athletes, but specifically parents as well to listen to, because we're bringing on one of the co-hosts of the Huddle Up Youth Sports Podcast. If you are not following them, go do that right now. The links are in the description. The Huddle Up Youth Sports Podcast. His name is Drew Funga, and Drew is a stud. I'm telling you what, he played 8-man football in high school. He earned a Division I football scholarship. He played at Idaho State University and then finished up his career at UNLV. So he knows what it takes to play at the Division I level. So we'll talk about how he got there. We'll also focus a large portion of this interview on youth sports. We're talking parents in youth sports. We're talking NIL in youth sports. We're talking all things youth sports today on the show. And so I would encourage all of you to take notes on this one. And then again, follow the Huddle Up Youth Sports Podcast, because that's what he and his co-hosts are doing. They're trying to help out the parents that have questions on how to navigate the youth sports world, because there's a huge portion of kids that by the time they get to the high school realm, they stop playing sports altogether because they didn't have a positive experience growing up. So that's what they're trying to do, is impact things, help people navigate this world of youth sports and make it a positive thing altogether. So I'm really excited for this interview. I hope you guys are too. Check this one out. This is the Gametime Guru. So,
what time is it? Game time!
This is the Gametime Guru podcast, where I interview sports figures from all over the world to help deliver a panoramic view on sports. So whether you're a former athlete, one of the crazies, or simply a casual sports fan, this is the perfect show for you as we peel back the curtains and learn from our guests every single week. I'm your host, Shane Larson, and I'm helping you see sports through a different lens. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Gametime Guru podcast. Shane Larson here, host of the show. Excited to be here with you guys today. Another interview coming your way. This is episode 396 of the podcast, 8 years running of the show, and just super grateful for everybody who's tuned in. We've got a really cool conversation coming your way. As you guys heard in the intro, we're talking youth sports today. We're going to be talking to a guy here who has a show with his friends and his co-host of the show, and we're going to be talking youth sports and a couple different topics in regards to that as well. So we're going to get to know him, but I want to shout out Timberline Digital Marketing. Thanks for being the sponsor of today's podcast. If you guys need help with anything, if you're listening to this, you're a small business owner, you might need help with your digital marketing, whether that's ads, if that's, your Google content, your Facebook ads, retargeting campaigns, email drip campaigns, whatever it might be, hit up Timberline Digital Marketing. You'll see the link in my description here. So coming into it, today, we've got Drew Funga on the show to talk youth sports and everything. But Drew, I want to welcome you to the show. First and foremost, thanks for joining me, man.
Absolutely, 100%. It's a pleasure to be on here, buddy.
Super cool. And right before we started recording, I found out that Drew is related to Jake Pele, who was on the show a couple months back. And I love Jake. And so this is just such a cool thing. I did not know that. I never put the pieces together for some reason. And so that was really cool to hear that. So Drew, before we get into the youth sports discussion, I kind of want to get to know you. I want the listeners to get to know you as well. So tell us a little bit more about Drew Funga. Like what is your sports background, and where did you grow up, and what impact has sports had on your life?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally from the Bay Area, had relocated to the Las Vegas area due to family being in the actual military, the Air Force Base to be exact. And so in the Las Vegas area, there's a Creech Air Force Base, or Nellis Air Force Base, and then Creech Air Force Base is in a little town called Indian Springs. I relocated out there to get out of the Bay Area just because of the roughness of coming up out of that area, the San Jose area. My dad wanted me to get out of there. He wanted better for me as well. So I had moved out there with my aunt. And so when I moved out there to the Nevada area, it was in a little town, probably about 42 miles outside of Las Vegas. It's a town that I grew up in, Indian Springs. We actually play 8-man football out there in Indian Springs. Yeah. So at the time, we were actually the number 2 team in the nation in 8-man football. And so we had a great reputation for football out there in Indian Springs. But after Indian Springs, I originally had been in communication. I was locked in to go to Washington State University as an inside linebacker. And the head assistant coach, who ended up leaving Washington State, who was bringing me on board, ended up taking the head coaching job at Idaho State University. And so Coach Larry Lewis was the head coach over there at Idaho State. And so that's how I actually ended up at Idaho State for my first year. That's how I met Rob and a lot of the other guys out there at Idaho State, Edwin Thompson, Cedric Dawson. So it was I was only there for, I believe, only a semester because my father had gotten sick. And so my dad was back home in the Nevada area at that time. And when I had to have that conversation with Coach Lewis to leave Idaho State, John Robinson offered me a full ride scholarship to come back home to UNLV. And then I made a transition from inside linebacker to fullback at UNLV running Rebels. And so I finished up my career there as well. And so my background is definitely in football. It's molded me into the character as far as values go that I instill, not only in my life, but my kids' life as well. And so it's been a great ride.
Wow, man. That's really cool. And you went from 8-man football in high school to a Washington State recruit to Idaho State to UNLV. Like, that's actually really cool. I want to ask you this. So Leighton Vander Esch was a star player at Boise State here in the area where I live. Star player, ended up going to the NFL playing for the Cowboys, but he also was playing small man football is what we used to call it. I mean, he was an 8-man football guy. Like, and I always we used to make fun of that growing up, right? But I actually have a huge respect for it. And I want to pick your brain on that real quick because I honestly think it did him a favor because you have so much more space to play and you have to understand. Yeah. And there's just different things that it teaches you. I would like to ask you that though, from someone who went from an 8-man, you grew up playing 8-man football through high school and such, then playing at the Division I level. What did playing 8-man football, do you feel like it helped you in a certain realm as far as like any skill set that translated to the field at the next level?
Yeah, it's definitely a double-edged sword. Number one, when we talk about helping me out, you have an opportunity to obviously be that guy, right?
Yeah.
Because the competition level isn't necessarily there like it is at the 4, 5A, 6A levels. So, however, if you are that guy, you need to make sure that you're maintaining that particular role and that leadership at all times. You need to make sure that every time you step foot into a game, you're averaging 500 yards, 600 yards a game, right? Because that's exactly what it takes for you to actually get noticed. And that's exactly what I was doing. Till this day, I pretty much hold all of the records as far as, and I played quarterback and inside linebacker in high school, but I broke all of these records, at the 8-man football level. Is it much? No, but I'll tell you what, it was good enough to get my name out there because by the time I actually finished up, in the entire state of Nevada, I was the number 3 recruit coming out during my year. There were only 2 other members that were coming out. One ended up going to the NFL, Arnold Parker, who ended up going to University of Utah. And then I believe he ended up going to the Cardinals as well. And then there was another defensive lineman as well, Kawika Sangapolo, who was probably the top recruit in the country, 5-star athlete. So to be up there in the amongst of those top athletes coming from 8-man football, it was definitely an honor and a privilege. I didn't take it lightly. However, did it impact me negatively? To an extent. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of D1 recruiters, they came out blazing my junior year. Who was this kid out there in the middle of nowhere? I mean, when I say we're in the middle of nowhere, we're out there by like Area 51. Like we're literally out in the middle of nowhere in this town with about 500 people in the entire community, 70 kids in the whole high school and only 30 in the graduating class, right? So when we talk about small school football, it was a small school. So it definitely, I think, impacted me because there was some uncertainties there. Was he playing against the caliber athletes that would make him ready to hit the ground running when he comes into the D1 level, right? And so that was something that I was constantly dealing with and battling with all the time. And so to really to capitalize on that and erase any of those uncertainties, it was my job to make sure that I went to every one of these football camps that these universities were actually interested in, right? UCLA was a big one. Coach Toledo at the time, who was recruiting me heavily. Coach Tedford, that was at University of Oregon. And like I said, this is 8-man football. So I would go to all these camps, make sure I go to their most, because every college has like 2 or 3 camps that they offer in the summer. What I did was I was trying to find out what camp had all of the top athletes coming and what had the top schools in the nation that were coming to that particular camp throughout that week. And those are the ones that I would sign up for. So I get out there, right, just make sure that I was able to showcase my talent. And there were some times where I was like, whoa, Yeah, there's some killers out there. And then there were some times when like I'm looking to, left or right, nothing impressed me, right? So it there was pros and cons of playing at a smaller school for sure.
Sure. No, and what I like there, and I hope people take note of what you just said there too, was that you proactively, I mean, you went to camps. I mean, it's not like you just assume that you're going to crush it in an 8-man and then all of a sudden get a D1 scholarship because of it. I mean, you had to go to camps. Like there's things there I think athletes need to take note and understand that like you can be a dog, but you still probably need to go to these camps and like be able to measure up. And it probably helps you, you get to see where you're at. But it's cool. I think that's a really cool opportunity. I tell the kids that play like 1A basketball here in Idaho, like small school basketball, and they dominate. And they come and play club ball with us when I'm coaching club ball, and we're on the circuit and we're traveling across, the Northwest and down into California as well. And we're playing big dogs. I mean, there's some athletes out there, and the funny thing is, I'm like, if you come and do this though, like you'll realize that you belong. Like you don't have to be starstruck, but some of them have those moments where they're like, oh, whoa, it's a whole different game. But I think the more they go to those, it helps them in their preparation to become better athletes so that they can actually level up because they don't get that in the competition that they see like on a day-to-day basis. So they have to be able to see that. And if done properly and utilized properly, I feel like those athletes can level up. It's really cool to hear that you were able to do that. What was the biggest transition for you, Drew, when you got to the collegiate football realm? Was it academics? Was it your schedule? Was it the athletic side of things? Was there a big transition for you going to the college level?
Yeah, definitely not the academics. I've always been a straight A student, graduated with a 4.3 GPA. But I think for me, it was more of the playbook, right? And so on defense, it was a lot easier because on defense, at the end of the day, hit the person with the ball, right? I mean, that's really what it comes down to, right?
Yeah.
As an inside linebacker, blow things up, hit the person with the ball. But when I transitioned over to the offensive side, I mean, we had a very complex, robust playbook with John Robinson. And then also at the same time, we had brought in an offensive coordinator at the time, which was Bruce Snyder, who was the offensive coordinator at Arizona State University. He was an OG in the game, a pioneer in the game. He had coached obviously way before my time as well. And then we ended up kind of like bringing him out of retirement over at UNLV. And so, he had a lot of complexity to his scheme of things. But I think that for me, that was probably the most difficult. And obviously academics played a role into it, right? Being able to understand those X's and O's, but it was, right? And I think that over time, as you continue to get those reps in, the more it became more and more easier, right? Where I was able to kind of understand the game. But even as my role as a fullback, I wasn't a fullback that, oh, let's give the ball to Drew. No, it was more of, all right, let's line up in ISO. We need this amount of yards, Drew. Same thing you do as an inside linebacker. I need you to do the same thing as a fullback and blow these linebackers up, blow these defensive ends up, right? We need to make sure that our running backs get those yards. And so I had a great career at UNLV, been able to play with a lot of great talent. Another outstanding fullback who came from Bishop Gorman, who was also a quarterback at the time, Deontay Perkins, and then two phenomenal running backs at UNLV, Larry Kroom and then Dominic Dorsey, were also the running backs at my time as well. Both went on to the NFL. So I think as a fullback, man, it's great to see that your running backs are able to excel and succeed, right? Now, granted, they were monsters. Would they have gotten those yards without a fullback? Probably. But does it help to have a fullback that's willing to hit? You know what I mean? And put it on the line for your running backs. Absolutely.
Oh, dude, you ask Emmitt Smith about his fullback. Maybe you go back in time, I mean, he'll give all the credit to Moose. So that's and the fullback's super important. Do you mind real quick, just like sharing, do you remember any of the plays that were in the playbook when you became a fullback that can you remember like one of the play calls that you got back at UNLV?
No, I don't even know. Like, yeah. When you listen to the playbook, there's certain in the verbiage in the playbook, it really only goes towards your particular position, right?
Right.
And so you're only listening for the triggers of what represents what the fullback is, but where I'm supposed to align at, or if I am motioning, or what side of the actual ball that am I going to be on. So those are the actual things. Like we had some plays, right? Like they're a sentence long, but a lot of it is totally irrelevant to me. And when you as a player get caught up in that, that's exactly how you start messing up. You make those mental errors and those mistakes of lining up on the wrong side of the ball, not being deep enough because you don't know how far off the line you have to be, right? Or am I in I formation? Am I in the split backs? Am I offset, right? So even though the play would be that long, I'm only listening to where I needed to line up at. And once again, I didn't need to worry about, okay, the rock is coming to me. No, I just needed to know, who do I have and who do I need to blow up, right? So it was pretty simplistic for me as a fullback in my particular role at UNLV.
Oh, that's cool, man. I've always found it so interesting. Like certain programs have very short play calls that are just super simple. And then I had like Brad Johnson on the show, who's a Super Bowl winning quarterback for the Bucks. And I was talking to him about that, and he gave me a play call because he was under John Gruden's watch, and John Gruden's known for his crazy play calls that are, and for a quarterback at least, you got to know the whole play call. And so he was giving, I'm like, dude, that is so complex. And like how he taught me how he learned the playbook. And it's like, I mean, there's a lot. He spent hours and hours every day just trying to read it and stuff. So that's cool. So last question in regards to your career here, Drew, I guess, what would be the impact that being an athlete, like having football in your life, what was the biggest impact that football had on you as an athlete that competed in it?
Yeah, I think when we talk about, my impact, or we talk about like influence as well, that really steered me in the right direction, I got to give my hat off to my dad, man. My dad, not only did he put me into the next level, but he also put my two other brothers right after me, and they played 8-man football. So that from three of your sons and playing 8-man football, and put all three of them at the D1 level, full athletic scholarships, right? And so that had a huge impact in me. And so I think that me being the oldest, it was my responsibility to continue to set, the right page, set the right direction for my younger brothers as well. And so I think that that's what really kept me motivated to continue to strive, not even just in football, but also in life as well, right? And so, because we all know sports are great, but it's such a temporary ride. And,
Oh,
and if you
sure.
don't have a game plan right after sports, then you're missing the whole point there. And so to be able to leverage the opportunity at a free education and enjoy the perks of being an athlete at the D1 level, I think it was my job and my role as an older brother to make sure that, like I said, man, I set the right path for my younger brothers. And I think that's what really made an impact on me, especially because of my father, but the influence for me to continue to strive on.
Freaking love that, dude. That's super cool. It's cool. And I hope, again, I'm going to encourage everybody. I do this often, but if you have your phone, you're listening to this on the audio side, or you're watching this on the YouTube side, make sure to take notes. If you have your device with you, hit the notepad and take some notes of what Drew's saying here. Take advantage of the sports opportunities that you have. I coach the seniors in high school in club basketball. And one of the things I've noticed, Drew, is like a lot of them forget to like appreciate the moment. And before they know it, like their careers are done. Some of them don't go to play the next level. Some of them do, but eventually it will end. Like I always try to remind them, I'm like, you never think it's going to end, but like you really only have about a 4-year window on average. Some of you, like yourself, might have 6 to 8 years, and then if you're really blessed, you might be able to play in the professional level. But it will end relatively quickly in comparison to the rest of your life, and living in it and understanding and leveraging those things that you're learning through sport. Like, what are the opportunities it gave you? It gave you an opportunity to go get a free education. It gave you an opportunity to lead. It gave you an opportunity to compete and have leadership and all this stuff and learn from mentors. And then that translates into the next part of your life. I hope people heard what you just said right there, though, and just remind themselves to live in the moment. State basketball here in Idaho just ended last week. And some of those kids will never play basketball again. And I want to remind them, like, it's over. Like, it's over, and that's okay. But, like, now leverage that what you were learning that whole time. Now it's time to use that for the rest of your life. So transition to the next spot.
Yeah, and I think, to your point, I think football does a great job at not even just football, sports in general. They really provide and teach life skills. And I can't emphasize that enough for these young athletes to hone in on that. Like, don't get just caught up in the moment of like, oh, this is football. Oh, this is basketball. Oh, this is baseball. I take a bat, I hit the ball, or I catch the baseball, I ground the baseball. There's more to it, right? There's life lessons behind everything that you're learning in sports. And I think that's what I love so much. And I have such a passion for sports, and I try to encourage it. Now, to your point, though, Shane, right? Like, this might be high school is as far as anyone's going to go. And there's nothing wrong with that. So many kids are taking the academic approach. And that is absolutely amazing to me. Why? Because I also think you also get a head start for those athletes that are trying to fulfill those dreams, and 4 years, 5 years, 6 years go by, and you're still trying to make it to the pro level and you can't do it. And now what? You have no work experience, right? And so there's a lot of there's pros and cons to it, but I definitely think, like I said, life skills for the young athletes out there, hone in on them. Listen to your parents. Your parents have been through things, right? They're not here to, they're not disciplining you just for the heck of it. There's a method to the madness, right? There's expectations of what us as parents and why we set those expectations in the home. And it's not just in the home, it's also on the sports fields, right, as well. And so, like I said, if I can, drop a line there to these young athletes, hone in on those life skills. Sports teach you so many different values that you'll be able to carry on for the rest of your life.
Oh, I love that, man. I absolutely love it. And as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, Drew, you guys host a podcast called the Huddle Up Youth Sports Podcast, and you guys are chatting in your bio. I will read it so I don't mess it up. In the bio on Instagram, empowering sports parents and athletes. So that's kind of what your guys' MO is in a sense. And I love the content that you guys provide. I've watched a lot of the segments that have popped up, and I've heard what you guys have to say. I actually really like the vibe between all of you guys too. It's just kind of a cool vibe. Like that's good stuff to have good people chatting about sports. This is something that's very near and dear to my heart, though. I have an 8-year-old son. I got a 5-year-old son. I got a 3-year-old daughter. And my 8-year-old is now into the youth sports thing. So he's coming up through the football, the flag football here, and he's coming up through the youth basketball here. And I'm starting to see some things, and this is where I'm super grateful to be able to chat with you. First off, follow them. I'm going to put the link here to your Instagram and TikTok pages, as well as the podcast itself, just so people can just see and follow what you guys are putting out there. But secondly, I just want to touch base on this. First and foremost, Drew, youth sports. Let's talk parents for a second, okay? What I've noticed, I obviously coach high school kids at a little bit, higher level. I understand how these teenagers work, and I've seen the parents there, but I want to talk about at the youth level, like younger level. I'm noticing parents are becoming more and more involved in a negative way, and it's impacting games. It's impacting the experience for these young kids in a negative way. And I have a lot of things I could say there, and one of them will be like, hey, we made it to a championship football game for the flag football league we were in last fall, and it was supposed to be a cool experience for these kids, and it was, but you always have like a parent or two that just take it 1 or 2 or 3 steps too far, and they ruin the experience for the kids. And I want to know what your thoughts are on the parents in youth sports, and is there a problem that you see, and what can we do to help the parents understand the real grand scheme of things? I feel like they're taking it way too seriously.
Yeah, just to your last point about taking it too seriously, there's a fine line for having an expectation as a parent for your young athletes. You also need to take in consideration as a parent that you shouldn't have that expectation. If your quarterback is 8 years old, you should not have that expectation of your 8-year-old kid being Tom Brady at the age of 8. They're not realistic expectations for a young kid. And I think what happens is that those parents get so involved with those expectations, it carries over to other aspects of the game, right? So we talk football. It's not just the expectations of my son being a quarterback and be the best quarterback. Now all of a sudden you have these expectations of how the program should be ran, how the referees should be NFL referees, right? The setting should be an NFL setting, right? You have all these expectations, and it's like they're not realistic. And I think what happens is you automatically set yourself up for failure there. It's not a realistic expectation. And I think that now, because you have this expectation, it's so high that everything else easily annoys you as a parent when you're not seeing or getting everything that you want for your child, right? And so I think that, for in that particular, that's one aspect. Another aspect is that parents are getting out of control. And I think that until the youth sports programs literally, not to plug our podcast, but huddle up and literally come to an agreement of like setting some boundaries, setting out, and maybe they do. Maybe there is a parent manual that every parent has to actually sign before your kid actually participates in, U conference or Idaho youth football sports, whatever the conference may be, there needs to be some type of an expectation for the parents to really hone in and at the same time, control the environment. Because I've coached Pop Warner in Las Vegas, and I have literally seen fights break out on the sideline while I'm coaching. I literally have seen it, literally in the back of the end zone. Parents, athletes, both sidelines rushing each other, where it made the Channel 8 news, right? I've seen that, and so I think that there needs to be more of some type of an expectation to be able to once again control those environments and make sure that the leagues are making sure that they're keeping parents at a wrap. I also think too that there's also you're setting yourself up for failure when you're throwing events at these open fields where parents have easy access to a coach, right? Like you're literally sitting 2 yards behind the coach in your folding chair. I think that you need to eliminate that. Now, granted, there aren't enough high school stadiums, right, that actually where there's bleachers and you can control that for everyone to play at. I understand that, but some way, somehow, there needs to be, once again, setting some boundaries for these parents to be able to control the environments because it's getting out of control.
It's a very good point with the open fields too, man. All of those were great points, but I'll say this too, as a coach in flag football, I'm just trying to help the kids get in the right positions and just figure it out. And last year, Drew, this last fall, I had to be reminded there was a specific game, it was a semifinal game, and I had to be reminded by the referees, who some of which are in high school, mind you, but there's other ones that are in college, just trying to get their $20 a game and get their money that they need for whatever they're using it for. But they're there to do the thing, but I had to be reminded from them to go and tell my parents on my sideline to shut up because they were like getting out of hand. I had to do that 2 times in the game. And what I found it to be really annoying that I had to go do that. Not at the refs. I was mad at the parents because I'm like, guys, now I'm focused. My energy's got to be focused on keeping you guys quiet, or else we're going to get a penalty and it's going to affect our players instead of me trying to coach and guide these kids who are out on the field. And so it's getting crazy. And I think part of that also, you just mentioned that they're right there next to the coaches, like 2 feet away. And it's just like, there's a lot of external factors. There's things that go into that. When a parent's getting out of control, it affects a lot of things. And the coach can no longer solely focus on the kids. He's got to focus on the extracurriculars going on behind him or her. And it's just hard. Yeah. I think
I think loud, obnoxious parents can really pivot the game quickly for you, right? From having referees on your side to easily that pivoting, and then now all of a sudden they're not on your side anymore, right? And so there's so many factors, just like you said. It's unfortunate. At the end of the day, these kids are there to learn the fundamentals of the game. They're there to develop themselves as athletes, and I think we're missing the point here. And so when parents start acting out of control, they're taking the attention off of their own child, and it's unfortunate.
I agree with that. I want to I went through some of your guys' videos on your Instagram page and went through and just listened to some of your stuff. One of the things I really enjoyed was you guys have a couple different videos in regards to like what not to say to kids. I want to talk about this for parents, like what not to say to them before a game or after a game. Kids, I've noticed that my son, he deals with something that's similar to me. He's got like performance anxiety when it comes to sports. And I had to overcome that my whole life. I think boxing was the biggest thing that helped me with that. But like, still, like it took me until I was almost 22 to really like use nervous energy for like good, because it used to shut me down. Like when I was in high school, I'd get super bad anxiety, and then I couldn't perform to the level I was what do they call practice All-American. I would always be really good in practice, and then the lights were on and I was getting anxious. And so my son, unfortunately, probably has the same thing as me. So I'm trying to be very cautious with how I interact with him prior to a game as well as after a game, win or lose, so that I can help him. I don't want to just coddle him, but I also need to have that boundary of just supporting and not, I don't ever want to be the parent that slam the car door and start, going off on what you could have done X, Y, and Z, you know what I mean? And so I'm curious your guys' thoughts on that, because you have spoken about certain things to, how to talk to the kids. What are your thoughts on that, Drew?
Yeah. So as parents, right, it's always good intentions, right? We're not obviously trying to put added stress to our children. But there are things that really, whether you realize it or not, things like, hey, son, so Auntie Elizabeth, Uncle John, all of your cousins, grandma and grandpa are all going to be at the game today. So I need you to put on a show today, right? Like just things like that. The intention is, hey, you got family coming to support you. This is awesome. But the way a kid receives it, it's like, oh my gosh, wait, what? All of these people are coming to watch me. So it's added stress for sure, right? And so I think that there's certain things that as parents, even though we think that we're literally trying to motivate our children, you need to evaluate your children on whether or not because there's a such thing as tough love, right? Hey, it's time to clock in, baby. Let's go. Let's go. Right? Then there's kids that they don't do well with that. They don't do well with the comments like, hey, listen, last week you only scored a touchdown, you threw 3 interceptions. I don't want you to throw any interceptions today. I need 2 touchdowns. Right. So it's just a lot of different, like I said, added stress. And I think we as parents need to kind of like literally evaluate what we're saying to our kids and how they actually receive them. Right. So instead, right, what are some of the things that we can say? Like, hey, listen, you've had a great week of practice. Let's put it together today. I'm excited to see you play. Or if you're talking to your daughter, Layla, listen, we don't know what we're stepping in today. It's okay. Let's go out there. Let's have some fun. And let's just play to your best of your abilities. Right? Just things like that, right? That could easily, once again, if you added an additional sentence to what I just said, after one of my comments that I mentioned, and you say, and because, grandma, grandpa, aunts and uncles, and all your cousins, they're all going to be here. You should have left that out, right?
Just
Because
leave it
now
out, yeah.
you add that additional stress. And so I think it's just important to, as parents, to just kind of evaluate some of the things that we say. And once again, it's all coming from a good place. But it's just, this generation, I think, it's a totally different generation of athletes, and they're exposed to a lot more, and they're also, taking, I feel like us growing up, our feelings weren't necessarily, I don't know if they were considered, right? I think it was just more of like, hey, we come from an era of like, hey, this is the show me state. Go out there, do what you need to do, ball out, and let's go, right? Clock in. Now there's different levels to it. And I think, like I said, from my perspective, I think it's important for parents to just watch what you say, even though it's coming from a great place. Just think about some of the things you say without adding too much as far as added stress to your kid, because it's already enough stress, especially if you're a parent who's a coach. Do you know how hard it is? My dad was the coach. You know how hard it is to play for your dad, who was an actual head coach of the sport that you're playing in? It's tough because everyone's looking at you to be the best athlete. That right there is enough stress. Or if it's a female coach, whether she's coaching flag football, she's coaching football, she's coaching any other sport. A child of a coach is probably one of the hardest things to do as a young athlete, to live up that expectation, because everybody outside of the circle, oh, that's a kid's coach. Kid's coach must be a baller. And so they have this expectation, and you as a kid, you're not having this conversation with your parent, but you don't want to let your parent down either. You want to make sure you live up to this expectation that everybody else has of you, because they don't want to let your parents down. You know what I mean? So it's unnecessary stress. It's added stress. But, once again, just evaluate some of the things that you say, because it can really play mind games on a kid before they step foot into that battlefield.
Yeah, I love all of that. I think it's super important. I'm very cautious with how I speak to my son, but like you said, there's some like different, the kids are just different these days. They got a lot of emotions, and it's okay. Like, that's just kind of how they are. And
Yeah.
they just got a lot going on in their head. I just feel like my son at 8 has so much more going on in his head than I did at 8 years old. Like, I started getting anxiety when I was like 13, but like at 8 years old, he's got like pressure. I'm like, dude, it's a freaking Friday night flag football game, dude. Like, the teams were like, they're not even like, you have to have equal playing time still at this level. Like, it's not even like for real. Like, it's not serious, dude. Like, chill. But like, he's
100%.
It's like, he's just got this seriousness in him, and it's I got to be cognizant of that and be cautious.
I'm in the same field, right? Like, so my little daughter, she's in golfing right now, and we're full blown into this golf world. She's in the Utah Junior PGA League, so she'll be getting ready for nationals as well. And so, the goal for me is, because she's at the bottom of the age bracket, 7, 8, and 9-year-olds for girls golf. The goal is to utilize this year as a learning year, but then to win nationals at the age of 9. Is that a lot of pressure for a 9-year-old to be the #1 kid in the nation in golf? 100%. And that's exactly why I'm so ready to hand her off to all of her coaches that are going to be taking over in the spring and the summer. Head coach from BYU girls golf team, girls head coach from the girls UVU golf team, and then a couple pro coaches from the Under Armour and Nike that are going to be taking her over, because I'm like you. I'm starting to realize that there's a lot going on in my 7-year-old's mind than I ever had at the age of 7 years old, right? And so for my daughter Layla, who's literally in the thick of this golf, and to me is going to literally be, she has such a phenomenal golf swing and she's so talented at the age of 7. It is absolutely ridiculous. And the biggest reason why I took up golf is because I can't afford for a 7-year-old to be whooping me up on the golf course, right? So daddy has to hurry up and get as much practice as I can to compete with my daughter. But yeah, there's a lot going on in these young kids' minds now more than ever.
Yeah, man. That's crazy too. Like, so it's so tough. I had 2 other topics I wanted to touch base on, and one you kind of alluded to it, so I want to make sure I do it now because it's good timing. The conversation of daddy ball. Drew, one of the things is like, and I'm not alluding to the fact that I'm not saying that your dad was playing daddy ball. It was more so that your dad was a coach. I coached my son in football. I've coached him in basketball. But I also love having him be coached by other people for the reason of just like allowing him to have other leaders that he has to listen to, and just like learning from other leaders, different leadership styles. That's just one of my things. It's not something that I think everybody has to do, but I've been part of teams where the dad of a player was the coach. And I guess daddy ball, where, some favoritism goes and you see, oh, dad's kid is the quarterback, right? And dad's kid is the shortstop. And
It's real. It's real.
It does. It is, right? And so I guess my question here is this, and I see it even at the high school level, man. And yeah, I'll just say that I see it at the high school level, and it impacts a lot of the players that I have coached. They come and voice frustrations to me. Oh, I need to come over to your team because, like, I don't have any kids that I'm coaching, and my kids are all young, And
Yeah.
so they say stuff like that, and I have to handle that as a coach of a different team in the same club. It's like that's always the same thing. So there are frustrations there. My thing is this, man. One, I don't think it's ever going to go away. I don't think that daddy ball is ever going to go away. It's always going to be a thing. I think parents, like you said, mean right. Like they have good intentions. I think those coaches have good intentions. But if you are with an athlete that's experiencing that, they're not the son of the coach, right? They're not the daughter of the coach. They have to experience one of their teammates getting the daddy ball treatment or whatever it may be. I guess how do we go about that, Drew? Like, how do we go about helping them just see bigger picture? Because sometimes it impacts the game, it impacts the outcomes of games, it impacts a lot of things. But we kind of just have to sit back because, oh, that's the coach. You got to do what the coach says. So, like, I guess my question is, how do we navigate that?
The only tip that I could provide there is to do your due diligence on a team before you actually join that team. I think it's important for a parent to do their history on that coach or all the coaches. Do these coaches have a history of playing daddy ball? And if they do, that's not the team for you. And I mean that harshly. Avoid that. Avoid all of that conflict. Avoid the frustration and the heartache. Go to another team. What happens is parents get so caught up because that team is the winning team. They win the championship every single year, so they want their kid to be a part of that. That's cool. But at that age, it's not about winning championships all the time. And it's definitely not worth the risk of you joining this team and your kid not getting any playing time because one coach or the head coach or the offensive coordinator and your kid only plays offense literally has the daddy ball disease, right? And so my advice there is to literally do your due diligence to avoid that headache. It's okay going to another team, even if they aren't the winning team. Maybe they go 500 every year. I'd rather my kid go out there and get the playing time, because what does playing time equal? Development. And at the youth sports age, it is all about development. You're setting them up for their high school career to be able to go on to the next level after that. And so if you're sitting here worried about championships and playing on a winning team, you're literally joining youth sports for the wrong reasons. right? And so it's important for parents to make sure that they have a good understanding. Yeah, of course, we all want our kids to win. But is your kid really winning when they're sitting on the sideline? Even though your kid's the best quarterback in the entire conference and your kid's not even playing because the head coach, the son's playing quarterback, are they really winning there? What are you really doing there to their confidence? And I'm not sure if you're aware, Shem, but I know like the statistics, and correct me if I'm wrong, like I think it's like maybe I would say 60 to 70% of youth sports athletes do not continue playing sports in high school.
Wow.
It could even be higher than that, to be honest with you. Why is that? Because of that exact reason. The discouragement of experiencing daddy ball, being on a team when you know that you're the best athlete, but you're not getting playing time because maybe you didn't grow up with all these kids. And all these kids, are their dads and their moms are all best friends, and they hang out every single weekend, having rendezvous, right? Like there's just so many different variables of why you're not possibly playing. And so I just think that it's important that like you need to make sure to, if you want to avoid being a statistic in that 60, 70%, then you need to make sure you're setting your kid up for success at an early age. Avoid that. Put them on a team that or her on a team that they can actually develop. It's important, right? Because eventually, I think as we get to that age, when they start to get to high school, eventually, unless you played at that next level, as the parent, you're probably going to realize like, okay, it's time to pass my kid on. I think everything that I've learned in my career growing up, it was perfect for the fundamentals. It was perfect to get them to high school. Okay, now it's time to me for that to hand them off to someone who is studying the game, someone who's active in the game, right? Who can actually get my kids to the next level. But I just think that it's crazy to know that statistic is so high of how many kids that don't continue to play sports in high school, all because of these poor experiences at the youth sport level.
So unfortunate too, because there are so many kids that could benefit from playing in high school, middle school, high school age, and they just burn out of it because of that. And that affects a lot of other parts of their life too. I honestly feel like sports are so important when you're younger because of all the things you had talked about, life lessons that you can learn even then. Like, but if you start experiencing that, and that will go into your schoolwork, you'll start to get frustrated with leadership, like teachers, and you go into your full-time job later on when nepotism is involved in the corporate sector and all these different
100%.
you get this like you get these feelings of how you were it almost is a PTSD to a certain degree of like just what you felt back then. It kind of resurfaces as you get older. It's unfortunate that happens. I'm doing the best that I can to not have that happen. So I'm glad that we're having this conversation because it is a big fear of mine when I coach my son and I have all the other kids. I want to make sure that we're not doing favoritism. You know what I mean? But I also still want to be a dad and encourage him and such, and understand when are we switching him out? When are we doing this? So I got to be cautious of it. It's just, I don't want to do that to other kids where it ruins their fun and their development and their love of the game. So, another question as we come to like, I think we need to have this conversation more often. Maybe we get this more consistently because there's so much more to chat about and it's going to be ongoing with things. But a question for this particular show, Drew, would be NIL. And the reason I want to bring up NIL is because I coach high school athletes, and I just want to ask one question regarding this. And I know this is shifting from the younger kids to a little bit older generation, but here's my question here. Now it's the wild, wild west. Kids can earn an income. Some states will allow it in high school, some won't, but they're starting to all get pitched to, right? There's all these businesses pitching NIL deals. Here's how you can build your brand. Pay me $5,000 and I'll help you build your brand so that you can monetize that when you get into college. This, that, and the third. So they're getting a lot of pressures and seeing different things coming out from the NIL perspective. I want your overall thoughts on NIL. Is it good for the athletes? Is it bad for the athletes at the high school level? Is specifically what I'm asking.
Man, that's an interesting question. I think that, and it's hard to say and answer, I guess, because if I was to go back in a time and this was offered to me, would I have taken it? 100%.
Yeah, sure.
Do I think that maybe it's something that should, not be a part of the game until they get into college? 100%. I think that it does definitely affect these high school kids. I think that there's two sides of it. Number one, if a kid is that good and there's some type of an incentive there to offer a kid to come to your university, then by all means, it is what it is because it is a business.
Right.
And that's exactly what it is. And I'm not sure if you've even heard this news, but there's actually news of like college programs, football programs are actually going to be sold. There are going to be investors investing in college football programs. So the game is definitely going to change when we talk about, NIL deals. I think that on the other hand, is it affecting the game? I definitely think it is. I think that there's no integrity anymore. There's no building a legacy at a college program anymore because everybody's chasing the money. It used to be a high school kid wanted to go to an actual college program because of the legacy, because of what the coach has done, the program, the winning history. Now, you'll get these top tier athletes that aren't even going to go to the top D1 schools. They're going to a D1 AA. They'll go to a D2 school because they're getting more NIL money. Now, from a business perspective, that could be smart, right?
Right.
Because we all know, just like you mentioned earlier, only 6 to 7% only get the opportunity to even go to D1. And then after that, only 1% make it to the league. So why not be smart and take that money and invest it if you're smart? So I think that, like I said, there's two sides of it. I wish it wasn't offered until the college level. Like you actually had to go and prove yourself at the college level and then start getting those endorsement deals, those NILs, because it's impacting why kids at the high school level are choosing the university to play at. They're not choosing it over legacy anymore. They're not choosing college programs over history anymore. And that's the sad part because I am such a big college football fan. I don't even watch the NFL. I'll watch the Super Bowl, maybe some of the highlights, but I'm so gung-ho on college football because of the fact that it wasn't prima donnas and, playing at the college level.
Right.
Right. It wasn't people showing up late for practice because they felt like it. It was just because these kids were hungry and they were trying to get to the next level, that pro level. Now you got some of these cats that are making more money than some of these NFL guys that are just making the roster.
Yeah.
Right. League minimums, 250, 275,000. These cats right now and at the college level or even high school kids are getting offered millions of dollars in NIL. And they're making more money than some of these guys in the NFL. And it's just crazy to me because once again, what's the end goal? What are we working towards? I'm hoping that they want to continue the game, but there might just be the situation where like they could take their money and run with it and could care less.
I agree with that. I do think there's going to have to be some sort of a shift, though. I mean, we're already the sources that I talk to consistently, they're getting donor fatigue already. Donors are sick of donating to NIL collectives, and they're also sick of having to go to the athletic administrations and athletic associations and donate to there too. So they're donating, and then all of a sudden it's next year they're asked for the same amount of money. Hey, can you give us $1 million? Can you give us this? It's like, dude, they only have so much to give. And they're getting donor fatigue. There's going to be something that happens here. When it comes to the NIL stuff, I think it's going to slow down to a certain degree, or it's going to shift completely. But I'm with you on as far as like college football. I love it too for the tradition and the history behind it all. And I do feel like it is changing quite a bit. It already has in the last 3 years. I'm hopeful that they'll figure something out though, because it's shifting the way guys play. I do remember, Drew, is funny. 2 years ago, there was a tournament here for basketball, but this kid was also a football player from California. And they were up for a winter tournament, and I was over there covering it. And the referee was like, that kid's got a 7-figure NIL deal. He's got more money in his bank account at 17 than any of us will see in our lifetimes. And then I went and looked it up. I was like, oh, yeah, shoot, dude's got a 7-figure deal as a 17-year-old. It was wild to me. I'm like, dude, these kids have more money. And I always wondered, like, he was going to go D1. I think he was going to Arizona. No, he wasn't Arizona. I got to think of where he went. I'll have to figure that out. But anyway, he's a beast, but I don't know whatever happened to him. He was supposed to be a one and done, and I don't know whatever happened to him because I haven't kept track of him. But I think it does change the way in the cycle. And most of those kids don't even know how to use that money, dude. Go look at Cam Newton. He didn't even know how to cash a check when he got a signing bonus with the Panthers. So it's like some of those guys don't even know what to do with that. So I don't know. It's just crazy to me. Like they don't even know what they're doing. But kind of a crazy concept. I'm sure we could talk about it for hours and hours and hours. I think it is just changing the game. But Drew, real quick, as we wrap this one up, I want to make sure everybody knows where to find you guys with the Huddle Up Youth Sports Podcast. I've got you on TikTok. I've got you on Instagram. I've got you on YouTube. Are you guys also on the audio platforms as far as Apple Podcasts and Spotify? Where can we find y'all?
Yeah, I think the long-term goal is definitely to get to the Spotify platform. I think the biggest thing for us is just building the platform outright. And so,
Sure.
And that's exactly, what the goal is right now is constantly just organically continue to build it, and then from there we'll start to navigate. But we're on pretty much, I think, like I said, I think you mentioned TikTok, IG, YouTube, Facebook as well. And so the goal, I think, long term will be to move over to the Spotify platform and keep plugging. The goal for the Huddle Up Youth Sports Podcast, once again, is just really for us to continue to unite, right? Bring in former athletes, current coaches, former coaches, parents to literally huddle up and provide valuable insight, right? That's exactly what our goal is. We want to make sure that for those parents that are out there that don't have the resources or just don't even know where to start on how to even get your kid involved, right? These are the types of things that we want to be able to share, be able to provide that type of knowledge. And then once again, even those kids that are at that level of high school trying to get to the next level, what is it going to take, right? And so we're going to be bringing in coaches that are speaking on that are literally having these face-to-face interactions with some of the top college programs across the country that are having those conversations and know exactly what these recruiters are asking, right? Like we want to be able to provide that insight because I'm not sure. It just seems like we've been in an era where like there's people that are trying to gatekeep all of this information. It's like, for what? There's enough love out there that we can go ahead and continue to spread out there, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. We want to make sure that anybody who doesn't have those resources or doesn't have a family member who's actually played a sport, and so it's like, who do you turn to, right? Turn to us. That's exactly what we want to be. We're exactly that platform that we want people to be able to lean on and be able to search in our content, like, hey, or DM us, because we get a lot of DMs, especially from moms that are out there that are playing the single mom role. Obviously, they didn't play football, but they got a kid who's one of the top recruits, and they don't even know what to do, or they see the potential in their kid, and they know that their kid's one of the top athletes. What should they be doing, right? And so that's exactly why we want to continue to leverage our platform. Huddle Up with Rob Pilecki and Dane Simmons on it. Those are our two other hosts that are on there, both Idaho State football alumni as well. But yeah, man, we're just trying to bring something positive to the families and to the kids out there to help them get to that next level.
Dude, I love what you guys are about. And I'm going to encourage everybody, again, go follow them, check it out. I'll be pushing more content towards you guys as well. I think it's super cool what you guys are doing. Got a little Bengal tribe there too with ISU.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. I really appreciate it, Drew. Hopefully we can connect again in the near future and chat some more. I think it's super, super cool what you guys are doing. And again, I appreciate you joining me. Last call out, Poly Golfin. Just tell us real quick about Poly Golfin. I know you didn't want a huge shout out for it, but what is Poly Golfin? I see the hat. What is Poly Golfin?
Yeah, absolutely, man. If there's ever a time that someone can't find me, there's a 99% chance it's because I'm Poly Golfing, right? And so it's just something that I have a passion. It's literally, now that I'm done playing football and I've been done playing for quite some time, like I just wanted to find something where I could still have that competitive spirit, but at the same time not be so physically demanding, right? As we continue to get older, those the bones and the joints, man, they're definitely catching up. But it was a way for me to utilize the word poly in a clever manner, right? Obviously, me being Polynesian, but when you always talk to somebody, hey, what are you doing this weekend? Nobody ever says the word probably. They don't articulate or enunciate it like that, right? Oh, probably doing this. No, it sounds like they're saying probably or poly. So I'm like, hey, you know what? That'd be a clever way for me to go ahead and utilize that word in Poly Golfing. And so once again, if there's ever a time that you can't find me, there's a 99% chance it's because I'm Poly Golfing.
Dude, I love it, man. I love it, dude. It's so dope. Friggin' awesome, man. I appreciate it. Appreciate the time, Drew. And again, if we can get connected in the future, that'd be super, super cool. And for all those who are listening, I appreciate you guys tuning in. I'd ask you guys to hit that follow button on whichever podcast platform you're listening on, if that's Apple, Spotify, or if you got on my YouTube channel, which is my smallest platform, but I am trying to grow it. So I would always appreciate a follow there for anybody listening. Appreciate you all. Make sure to stay tuned because we'll be coming to you guys next week with another interview. Take care. Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of my show. Now, if you could go and do me a favor, head over to iTunes, give me 5 stars, and leave me a review. It would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your support.